The table was set and ready when I walked in. The white cloth was long and crisp, the silver cutlery polished to perfection, and the crystal glasses glimmered in the soft lighting. It was the kind of setup my parents always liked for these nights, family night, but it was never really about family. It was about putting on a show. Relatives we hardly saw the rest of the year had flown in for it. My dad always liked those gatherings. They were his stage, his moment to shine as the man everyone thought he was. I kept my head down as I helped my mom bring out the platters of food. Roast beef, garlic mashed potatoes, bowls of salad I knew no one would touch. I placed the bread rolls on the table while she leaned over and whispered, "Smile, don't embarrass us." Her smile was all teeth but no warmth, more like the one you flash to the neighbors when you want them to think everything's perfect. Dinner began just like it always did, with my dad telling grand stories where he was always the hero. He held his wine glass like it was a microphone, pausing for laughs, gesturing with dramatic sweeps of his arm. Cameras clicked as relatives snapped photos, my aunt recording a short video of him entertaining the family. Every time I opened my mouth to answer a polite question, he'd cut me off. About halfway through, my uncle made some comment about how quiet I was. My dad grinned, but it wasn't friendly. "She's always been better seen than heard," he said. A few chuckles rolled around the table, but he wasn't done. You know what? Let's make her useful." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. He leaned toward me, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Come on, you're not contributing to the conversation. At least contribute to the decor." Before I could react, his hand was at the back of my head. A quick, hard shove. My face slammed into my plate, mashed potatoes, gravy, and the hot sting of something soaking into my skin. Gasps and laughter filled the room. I lifted my head slowly, food clinging to my cheek and hair. My dad sat back in his chair, beaming, as if he'd just told the punchline of the night. "There," he said, pointing at me. "Now she matches the table." The room burst into a mixture of laughter and awkward glances, but no one told him to stop. My mom sipped her wine, pretending not to notice. Some cousins had their phones out, recording, taking pictures. I wanted to disappear, but stayed frozen, forcing myself not to cry. Crying would have been the highlight of his evening. I wiped my face with a napkin, hands trembling. My dad leaned over to my uncle and said, "She's sensitive. Can't take a joke." My uncle laughed, and I stayed quiet for the rest of dinner. Every bite I forced down tasted like humiliation. Whenever someone pulled out their phone, I wondered if they were watching the video they'd just taken. My cheeks burned, but my mind raced. When dinner ended, my dad started posing for photos with Madison, my sister. She was his golden child, the one he bragged about to everyone. I noticed her smirk when she glanced at me, like she'd just been given a gift she could use for months. The room was loud with conversation, clinking glasses, and the occasional flash from a camera. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I leaned over the sink and looked in the mirror, streaks of gravy still in my hair, my makeup smudged, eyes glassy but dry. My chest tightened, not from wanting to cry but from a growing idea that was forming in my mind. Every single one of those relatives had a phone. Phones that had been out the entire night. Phones that had captured my dad's little joke in perfect detail, and my dad, who loved his reputation, had no idea that footage could do more than embarrass him. It could destroy the carefully constructed image he'd been parading in front of everyone. When I walked back out, I smiled for the first time that night. Not because I was okay, but because I knew the cameras he adored were about to tear him apart. The rest of the evening, I became invisible on purpose. No one notices the quiet one in the corner, especially when the spotlight is glued to my dad and Madison. They were busy giving speeches about family values and how we always stick together. Every time I heard those words, I had to stop myself from laughing out loud. From my seat, I watched the phones. Some were still recording, others scrolling through photos. It wasn't hard to tell which moments people had captured. A few cousins would glance at me, snicker, then tilt their phones away when I looked. Good. That meant the footage was out there, and all I had to do was get my hands on it. When dessert was served, I slid into a conversation with my younger cousin, Dylan. He was 14, glued to his phone, and eager to be treated like an adult. "Hey," I said casually, "I need a copy of that video from earlier, for memories." He grinned. "The mashed potato thing. That was hilarious." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice light. "Yeah, that one. Send it to me before you forget. By the time the cake was being cut, the clip was sitting safely in my messages. Over the next 2 days, I collected more. Aunt Sherry sent me a shaky vertical shot, with the table's gasp audible. My cousin Ashley had the clearest one, a full view of my dad's smirk. My mom's wine glass, and the exact moment my head hit the plate. And then there was Dylan's clip, close enough to catch every word. Make yourself useful as decoration, followed by that awful laughter. 3 angles, 3 perfect nails for the coffin. But footage alone wasn't enough. My dad was a master of twisting things, making people think his cruelty was just good humor. I needed to set the scene so no one could laugh it off. So, I started editing, not cutting anything out, just weaving the truth around it. Clips of him bragging about our tight-knit family, talking about respect. Smiling in holiday photos, all leading up to that moment at the dinner table. Slow motion on the shove, the laughter, my face coming up from the plate, then a freeze frame. I didn't post it online. That wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. I wanted him to feel the floor fall out from under him in real time with no chance to spin it, no way to stop it. The opportunity came faster than I expected. A week later, my parents announced they were hosting a slideshow montage for the extended family and close friends, a recap of that night. They wanted everyone to remember the joy we shared. It was perfect. They'd be using the big rented projector in the same banquet hall, with the same crowd, and the same need for attention. I already knew where the USB port was on that projector. For the next few days, I played it cool. I even helped Madison choose outfits for the event, nodding along to my mom's plans for catering. All the while, the real montage, the one I created, sat quietly on a drive, in my bag. The night of the slideshow, the hall was filled with chatter, and the smell of overpriced appetizers. My dad worked the room, his voice booming, clapping old friends on the back. Madison was snapping selfies with anyone who'd pose. I stayed in the background until they were distracted, then walked straight to the projector table. In less than 10 seconds, my drive was in, my file queued, and the original slideshow quietly replaced. As I walked away, my pulse pounded so hard I could hear it. It wasn't just adrenaline. It was the knowledge that, in a matter of minutes, the same crowd that laughed with him was about to laugh at him, or worse. Sit in stunned silence as the mask he'd worn for years shattered in front of his own eyes. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the room. The projector screen lit up with the opening title slide, A Night to Remember. I sat near the back, my chair angled so I could see both the screen and my parents' faces. My dad, beaming, took his seat front and center, with my mom beside him and Madison leaning in for the perfect photo op. This was their moment, they thought. The slideshow began innocently enough. A few generic stock photos of champagne glasses clinking, then some posed family shots from earlier that night. The crowd murmured in recognition, smiling at themselves. On the screen, my mom whispered something to my dad, and he chuckled, already basking in the praise he thought was coming. Then my clip rolled. It opened with my dad giving one of his grand speeches about the importance of respect and family. Crisp audio, his words crystal clear. You could see heads nodding in the footage, relatives smiling politely. Then, as his voice continued in the background, the video faded into slow motion, showing him slamming the back of my head into the plate. The room's collective breaths seemed to catch at once. Gasps rippled through the tables. The audio cut to live sound. Make yourself useful as decoration, followed by that awful laughter. On screen, my face came up from the plate, food clinging to my cheek. Freeze frame. The next shot was from another angle, my uncle's phone, showing my mom sipping wine and smirking while I wiped my face. Then another angle from Dylan, catching my dad's satisfied grin in perfect focus. Between each clip, I'd inserted text in bold white letters. A father's joke, a family's laughter, a daughter's humiliation. Someone in the audience muttered, "That's not funny." Another whispered, "Is this real?" And then came the part I knew would burn deeper than anything. I'd edited in years of other moments recorded by someone at some time that showed the pattern no one had connected before. Him playfully shoving me into a pool at a wedding while I was in full makeup. Him telling a cousin, "We don't expect much from her. She's not like Madison." Him mocking my job in front of the neighbors. All of it intercut with their polished holiday cards and perfect family posts from social media. The room's energy shifted from discomfort to something heavier. Some people sat with their arms crossed, their smiles gone. Others glanced around, as if unsure whether they should stay seated. Madison had stopped looking at the screen entirely. Her eyes were locked on me, wide and accusing, like she'd just figured it out. My dad was frozen, leaning slightly forward, as if getting closer to the screen would change what he was seeing. And then, for the final blow, I included a clip. From that very night, one I'd recorded on my phone in the bathroom mirror, gravy still in my hair. I looked straight into the lens and said, "This is what respect looks like in our family." Fade to black. The words appeared, "A night to remember," for all the right reasons. Then nothing. The lights came back on. No applause. No polite laughter. Just the kind of silence that feels like a physical weight pressing down on everyone. My dad's face was pale, jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitch. My mom reached for her wine glass, but her hand shook enough that the liquid rippled inside. Around them, relatives avoided eye contact, whispering quietly to each other. Aunt Sherry leaned toward her husband and whispered, "I had no idea." Loud enough for half the table to hear. Mr. Harlan, my dad's longtime business contact, stood up and said, "I think we've seen enough. Good evening." He walked out, without shaking my dad's hand. 3 other couples followed. The buzz of whispered judgment was deafening. Madison finally snapped, hissing across the table at me, "You think this makes you look better?" I didn't answer. I just stood, picked up my bag, and walked slowly toward the exit. Every step felt like the click of a lock on a door my parents would never open again. As I reached the door, I turned back just once. My dad was standing, trying to speak over the noise, insisting it was all in good fun and taken out of context. But no one was listening. They'd all seen the context from 3 angles in slow motion. And that image of him shoving my head into my plate would live longer than any polished speech he could ever give. I stepped out into the cool night air and took a deep breath. Somewhere inside, he was still trying to control the story, but it was gone. The cameras he loved so much had finally told the truth, and they'd told it to the only audience that mattered to him. At home, I deleted the files from my phone. I didn't need them anymore. The real footage was burned into every person's mind who had been in that room. And I knew the next time someone mentioned my dad's name, it wouldn't be followed by praise. It would be followed by the memory of that night. The night his own show turned on him, and for once, I didn't feel like the quiet one in the corner. I felt like the one who ended the performance.